The Sahara was not always sand. Once it was green. Rivers flowed, animals roamed, and people built settlements where now only silence remains. And in the middle of that vanished world lies a circle so immense it dwarfs entire cities. What purpose could it have served? And why does its shape echo a legend written 2,000 years ago? To stand in the Sahara today is to witness endless horizons, sand stretching beyond sight, heat shimmering like water, winds sculpting dunes that shift with every season. But buried beneath that silence is a secret that only the skies could reveal. When viewed from above, the desert is broken by a shape so perfect, so deliberate, that it feels out of place in nature. 40 kilometers wide, formed in concentric rings, it is called the Richat Structure, or more hauntingly, the Eye of the Sahara. For centuries, no one knew it was there. Caravans of traders, armies of conquerors, even whole cultures moved across this desert without ever realizing they were walking across a circle large enough to swallow a city. Its shape was invisible at ground level. Only with the advent of flight and later satellites orbiting Earth did its colossal outline come into focus. From space, it appears unmistakable, like the imprint of some ancient design pressed into the land. At first, scientists dismissed it as geology, a natural dome eroded over time, the result of processes no more mysterious than wind and water. But that explanation left questions behind. Why the symmetry? Why the precision? And why here, in a desert that once supported rivers and lakes, in a region that long ago might have been home to civilizations now forgotten? This is where speculation turns to legend. For in the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato lies a tale that has haunted the imagination for over 2,000 years. The story of Atlantis. A city built in rings, wealthy beyond measure, ruled by kings, and lost in a single night of destruction. Historians insist it is nothing more than allegory, a moral story disguised as myth. Yet when one compares Plato's description with the Eye of the Sahara, the similarities are hard to ignore. Concentric circles, water once flowing between them, a fertile land that no longer exists. Coincidence, perhaps, or something more. The eye has become a puzzle with two faces, one geological, one mythical. On one side, the forces of the earth carving stone into patterns mistaken for architecture. On the other, the possibility that the legend of Atlantis was not mere imagination, but a memory of a place that truly existed, later buried in sand and time. But what makes this mystery more unsettling is not just the shape itself, it is the silence around it. No ruins, no artifacts, no carved stones have yet been found within the eye. Nothing that points clearly to human hands. And yet, the Sahara is vast, its history barely explored, its secrets buried under meters of sand. What might still lie, hidden there, waiting for someone to uncover it? In this forgotten place, questions multiply. How old is the eye? If it is natural, why does it mirror descriptions written by Plato centuries ago? And if it is connected to Atlantis, then what else about human history do we not yet understand? The Eye of the Sahara does not offer answers. Instead, it waits, silent, immense, a circle in the sand that may hold the memory of worlds we have lost. The first scientists who examined the Eye of the Sahara did not call it Atlantis. They called it a dome, a geological formation that had once bulged upward from the Earth's crust before collapsing and eroding over millions of years. Layers of rock peeled away like the rings of an onion, leaving behind the giant spiral pattern we see today. A simple, natural explanation. Nothing more than geology at work, And yet, even those who accepted this theory could not ignore the details. The symmetry was uncanny. Perfect circles, aligned as though carved with intention. Natural domes are common, but few leave behind such precise concentric rings, and fewer still on such an immense scale. Other geologists suggested it might be the scar of an ancient asteroid impact, a crater left behind by something that struck the Earth long before humans walked these lands. At first, the theory fit. The circular shape seemed almost too precise to be explained by erosion alone. But when researchers searched for traces of melted rock, the unmistakable fingerprints of an impact, they found none. The eye, it seemed, was not born from the heavens. So the explanations shifted again. Perhaps it was volcanic. Perhaps hydrothermal forces shaped it. Perhaps a combination of processes, playing out over millions of years, left this strange signature on the desert floor. Science, in its way, had offered answers, but none of them felt complete. None of them explained why the eye's formation seemed to echo human design, why its rings mirrored patterns described by Plato centuries before modern science even existed. And perhaps the most curious detail of all, the eye is not random. It sits in a region where rivers once flowed, where fertile plains once stretched across what is now desert. The Sahara, before it became sand, was alive. Lakes filled its basins, crocodiles and hippopotamuses swam in its waters, and human settlements thrived on its shores. To place the eye in that ancient landscape is to imagine something different. A circular island in the middle of a green world, not the barren silence of the Sahara we see today. That image changes everything, because in Plato's writings, Atlantis was not only a city of rings, it was surrounded by fertile lands, watered by rivers, a paradise that turned to ruin. Could the eye have been that place? Not in a desert, but in a lost green Sahara. The theories leave us with a paradox. The eye is too vast, too symmetrical to ignore, yet it offers no ruins, no inscriptions, no tools to prove human hands were ever involved. Geology explains much, but leaves a shadow of doubt. Myth explains little, but feels too close to dismiss. And so the eye of the Sahara sits between worlds, between science and legend, between erosion and memory. A place where every answer only sharpens the question. 2,000 years before satellites revealed the eye of the Sahara, a Greek philosopher described a city that no one had ever seen. His name was Plato, and in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he spoke of an island nation that rose to power, challenged the known world, and fell in a single night of catastrophe. He called it Atlantis. Most historians treat Plato's story as allegory, a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and corruption. But his account was unusually specific. Atlantis, he wrote, was arranged in concentric rings, a central island surrounded by alternating circles of land and water. Bridges connected the rings, canals cut through them, and a great plain stretched beyond. The people of Atlantis built temples, harbors, and palaces. They lived in abundance, drawing wealth from fertile lands and trade with distant peoples. Now picture the eye of the Sahara, concentric rings, not carved, but formed in stone. A central core, surrounded by alternating bands of rock and valleys. Rivers once ran nearby, feeding lakes and plains that are now swallowed by desert. If the Sahara was green when Atlantis supposedly thrived, then the eye's landscape begins to look eerily familiar. Even the scale aligns. Plato described Atlantis as larger than Libya and Asia combined, though some scholars believe he meant a central city of significant size rather than a whole continent. The eye spans 40 kilometers, vast enough to house a city, surrounded by plains that once were fertile. The resemblances go further. Plato claimed Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a phrase often interpreted as the Strait of Gibraltar, the gateway from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic Ocean. From there, Atlantis was said to lie across the sea. But others argue beyond may have meant simply outside the Mediterranean world, placing the Sahara just south of the Pillars, within reach of the description. Yet for all these parallels, doubts remain. The eye offers no ruins, no harbor walls, no palaces. If a civilization flourished there, where are the stones they built with, the tools they left behind, the traces of their lives? Could thousands of years of wind and sand erase everything? Or is it possible that the memory of the eye itself, a monumental natural landmark, inspired stories that grew into myth? The deeper one compares Plato's text with the eye, the more unsettling the question becomes. Was he describing a real place, imperfectly remembered through centuries of oral tradition? Or was it only a fable that happens, by chance, to resemble a geological oddity in the Sahara? Atlantis has always hovered at the edge of history, too vivid to dismiss, too uncertain to prove. But when the eye is seen from above, it's hard not to wonder whether Plato's words were not invention at all, but echoes of a city whose stones now sleep beneath the desert sands. And yet, the silence persists. The eye does not yield artifacts. Archaeologists have not unearthed evidence of a lost city here. For some, that silence ends the debate. For others, it deepens the mystery. The Sahara as we know it today, endless dunes, scorching winds, lifeless expanses, is not the Sahara of the past. Thousands of years ago, this very desert was a thriving landscape of grasslands, lakes, and rivers. Archaeologists call it the Green Sahara. Across its expanse, ancient rock art tells the story. Carvings of giraffes, elephants, crocodiles, animals that could never survive here today. Hunters with bows, families with livestock, scenes of daily life. These images are not imagination, they are evidence. They whisper that this was once a world full of water, vegetation, and people. But then, something changed. Scientists now know the Sahara goes through cycles, great climate swings that transform it from fertile plains into arid desert, and back again. The last transformation began around 5,000 years ago. The rains stopped. Lakes dried into salt flats. Rivers cracked into canyons of dust. Populations abandoned their settlements, retreating toward the Nile or vanishing entirely. And here's the haunting thought. If a great city once stood in the Sahara, something like Plato's Atlantis, a hub of power and culture, the desert would have swallowed it whole. Structures buried under dunes, roads erased, entire histories ground into sand. This makes the eye of the Sahara even more mysterious. Was it a natural geological formation revealed by erosion? Or could it be the scar of a civilization destroyed not by war, but by climate itself? The Sahara's transformation provides a chilling backdrop. A place that was once alive enough to cradle a mighty people, and ruthless enough to erase them forever. And so the question sharpens. If Atlantis truly existed, and if it vanished in the Sahara, how much of it lies beneath the very sands we walk upon? They say some mysteries can only be grasped when seen from above. The eye of the Sahara is one of them. From the ground, it's almost invisible, just ridges of rock and barren desert stretching endlessly. But from the sky, everything changes. The perfect concentric circles emerge, as if someone carved a colossal target into the earth. In fact, the world only truly noticed it when astronauts began orbiting the planet. During the Gemini missions of the 1960s, astronauts peered out of their capsule windows and saw something startling in the Sahara, a massive circular formation staring back at them. They nicknamed it the Eye of Africa. It became a landmark for space travelers, a feature so vast it could guide them across the featureless desert below. But once humanity saw it, questions followed. What force could shape a structure 40 kilometers wide into almost perfect circles? Was it volcanic, an impact crater, or something else? Geologists stepped in with theories. The eye, they argued, is the eroded remains of a dome. Layers of rock pushed upward by ancient volcanic forces, then slowly worn down by wind and water. A natural accident, nothing more. But here's where the mystery tightens. Few natural formations mimic human design so precisely. The eye's layout, a central core, surrounded by alternating rings of land and water channels, mirrors Plato's very blueprint of Atlantis. It's not just vaguely similar, it's uncannily close. And that raises a question scientists still wrestle with. When nature sculpts something that resembles myth so exactly, is it coincidence or is it a clue? When you first see the eye of the Sahara from above, it feels like an ancient blueprint, a colossal target burned into the earth. For those who believe in Atlantis, the resemblance to Plato's circular city is too perfect to ignore. But geologists have a different story to tell, one rooted not in myth, but in deep time. They call it the Richat Structure, and according to them, it is no lost city, but the remains of a geological dome pushed upward by volcanic forces some 100 million years ago. Over eons, wind and rain carved its concentric rings into the exposed rock, leaving the immense bullseye we see today. To science, this is erosion, not architecture, yet even here the story resists being tied down. Some argue it might have begun as a meteor impact crater, though later evidence weakened that theory. Others suggest chemical processes deep beneath the Earth's surface caused rocks to bubble upward like dough, only to be stripped bare by weather. The truth is, even geologists don't all agree, and so the legend slips back in. Because if this is purely a natural formation, why does it align so eerily with Plato's description? Why do its rings span almost exactly the size he gave for Atlantis? Larger than any city of his age, yet strangely proportioned. Why is it set inland, near an ancient coastline that maps suggest once reached the Atlantic? Those who favor the Atlantis connection argue that dismissing it as coincidence feels too neat, too convenient. After all, countless myths around the world speak of great floods, vanished lands, and civilizations swallowed by disaster. Could the eye be one of those scars left behind? But skeptics fire back with a simpler answer. Humans love patterns. We are drawn to circles, to symbols, to stories that seem to fit together. What we see in the eye, they argue, may not be proof of Atlantis, only proof of our need to find Atlantis. And yet, one unsettling fact remains. If the eye was once surrounded by water, as the evidence of ancient riverbeds suggests, then its rings would not have been dry land, but islands, just as Plato described. Add to that the traces of Neolithic settlements, the bones of fish that lived in lakes now gone, and the picture begins to blur between erosion and memory. Is the Richat structure merely a quirk of geology? Or is it a natural canvas upon which an ancient, now forgotten people painted their own story, one Plato would later echo in his dialogues? The mystery refuses to settle, and perhaps that is why the eye endures, not as a solved riddle, but as a mirror reflecting our questions back at us. Standing on the rim of the Richat Structure, it is hard to feel certain of anything. The rings stretch outward into silence, too vast to grasp from the ground. Only from the sky does their geometry reveal itself, like a message not meant for human eyes. Modern explorers and researchers have returned here again and again, each searching for answers but leaving with more questions. Geologists with their instruments, archaeologists with their maps, believers in Atlantis with Plato's texts in hand. All of them circle the eye, measuring, debating, imagining. Yet no single explanation ever settles the matter. Satellite surveys have shown faint traces of what might have been rivers flowing through this land long ago. If so, the eye may once have been ringed with water, matching Plato's description of alternating seas and land. Fossils of fish and shells found nearby whisper of an oceanic past, and the stone tools unearthed close to its edge hint at human life that thrived here during the Green Sahara. But how much of that life was ordinary, and how much might have belonged to something extraordinary, we do not know. The skeptics remain unmoved. To them, every line of the eye is geology, nothing more. But they too are forced to admit that the formation is unusual, one of the most striking natural patterns on Earth. If it is not Atlantis, then it is still something worthy of awe, a record of forces beyond our scale, etched over millions of years. And yet, the whispers persist. Independent researchers argue that erosion alone cannot explain the almost perfect concentric rings. Some claim that what we see today could be the ruin of a once-ordered structure, reshaped and broken by time. Others suggest that Plato may not have been writing pure fiction at all, that he was drawing on memories older than his own civilization, fragments carried through oral traditions from a world long drowned in sand and sea. That is the spell of the eye. Every time you think the mystery is solved, another question rises. Why does this formation echo so precisely the dimensions Plato gave? Why here in a land once wet and fertile, now erased by desert winds? And why does the very shape of it feel less like an accident and more like a story waiting to be told? The eye of the Sahara endures not only as a geological wonder, but as a riddle, one that sits quietly beneath the sun, offering no answers, only silence. And so the mystery sharpens. If this is not Atlantis, then what exactly is it? The desert is patient. It waits, shifting its sands with the wind, erasing what does not belong and burying what once thrived. The eye of the Sahara lies at its heart, a vast reminder that not everything in this world can be explained. Not everything in history can be neatly written down. For those who stand here, looking out across its rings, it is impossible not to feel a pull, as if you are standing at the edge of two worlds. One world is the one science describes: erosion, geology, time stretching into the millions of years. The other is the one Plato whispered about: a city lost, a people erased, a memory carried in myth. The truth may lie somewhere between, or in a place we have not yet learned to see. What we do know is this: the Sahara was once green. Rivers flowed where dunes now rise. Life flourished, and civilizations may have risen in places we no longer remember. Perhaps Atlantis is not just one city, but a story told in many guises. The memory of countless peoples who lived, built, and vanished when the world shifted beneath them. The eye forces us to confront that possibility. It reminds us that human history is not a straight line, but a labyrinth with missing corridors. Every vanished culture, every ruin buried in sand, every myth passed down through generations. They are all fragments of a story too vast to fit inside one book or one civilization's memory. Maybe Plato invented Atlantis to teach a lesson. Or maybe he echoed something he only half understood, a memory that reached him across centuries. The eye of the Sahara does not answer that question, but it does keep the memory alive. Its silence is louder than proof. It does not confirm, and it does not deny. It simply endures. And perhaps that is why we cannot look away. Because standing at the edge of the eye is not just about Atlantis, or geology, or myth. It is about us. Our need to seek patterns, to find meaning, to believe that the past still has secrets to offer. It is about the way we search the world, not only for what it is, but for what it once was. The eye of the Sahara is not only a question of history, it is a mirror. When we peer into its rings, we see our own reflection. Humanity's endless hunger to know where we came from, and the quiet reminder that some answers will always remain out of reach. So the eye waits. Silent, immense, unchanging beneath the desert sun. A circle without a beginning, without an end. A riddle written in stone, daring us to keep asking the question. What lies beneath the sands we have forgotten?